If anyone's there, can you give us just a hello in the chat, just so we can make sure some people are there? If any of you haven't talked to me or met me before, my name's Jake. With Fujifilm, I've actually been on Fujifilm for a long time. I started off with the X-T1, I used the X-T2, and I really like the system, so I'm quite familiar with everything that they do. They just have such a great system, and the reason I went for them to start with is because I shoot a lot of film, and I like the colors that you get out of the Fuji system, and you can pretty much do the same workflow as you would for film as you would for digital. So basically, that's why I'm here to run this Fujifilm seminar. I know the cameras quite well. If any of you do have any questions, feel free to put it through into the chat. We're happy for you to do that throughout the whole session or at the end, and we'll get to them as soon as we can. Now, with firmware is something that a lot of people have in the back of their mind. They're not really too sure on what it does for your camera in all realness. But on the Fuji system, they're actually really good with their firmware updates and making sure they pack a lot into them. So a good example of this is, like I said, I own the X-T1, and to be honest, the X-T1 when it came out had a few bugs, had a few issues and slowness, and by the end of the X-T1 life cycle, it became a really, really capable camera. And I think Fujifilm's really good with that. When they hear feedback from people on the market, they generally try to add it in through firmware. So some of the general things you can do with firmware updates is to update stuff like your compatibility with your processor, so you get a bit quicker speeds and reactions. Autofocus is a big one that they do in the firmwares. I know with the X-T3 specifically, which is the camera that we're filming on right now, they did a lot with the autofocus in the firmware updates, and they've done a lot with the general tracking speed as well. So there's also stuff like lens compatibilities as well. So some of the older firmware cameras need updates to work with some of these newer lenses. So we're basically going to go through how to do this for your Fujifilm system. See if you have any questions with it, and we'd love for you to interact with us any way you can as well. So the first thing I'll start off is just some basics on what you need to get started. So one of the first things that Fujifilm wants you to do is have a fully charged battery. It doesn't take too long in all honesty, but they basically want no chance of the camera shutting down, because if the camera does turn off, you can have a few issues such as corruption of the firmware that's already there in the CPU. So biggest thing is to make sure you have a charged battery. So we've got our battery charged all the way up at the moment. It's good to go. The next thing that we do is we need to format the card. So best way to do that is through the menu system, and I can show you how to do that now. So I'm going to pop over and open up our menu system. So we're in our menu system here, and if you pop into the user setting, at the very top you'll see format. Now that's important again because it just gives our card a good baseline and it's adapted to the camera. That means we're going to be able to load the firmware on there nice and easy. So I'll do that quickly. And I've got my card in slot 1, and I'll say it's okay to format. Just make sure you've got any files that you might need off of the card first, and that'll be fine for all of that. So that's formatting there, and we're good to go back and shoot. Hello everyone. I think I've got a question there from Max. So you're having some difficulty accessing the software for tethering a GFX. So what software are you currently using for your GFX to tether? I'll let you answer that in the chat, and I'll get back to that one. So yeah, basically once we've got that software, once we've got the card formatted, we're going to be all right to load the firmware onto the card. So first thing I'll do is I'll get Kate to hop onto the Fuji site there for me. We're going to screen share that now. So I'll do that. Right, perfect. So it's really easy to do. You basically hop onto the Fujifilm site, and if you click on the support at the top there, and you go download, yep. right there you'll see firmware, and you click on the relevant product. As you can see there, it does mention lenses as well as accessories. So it's not just your cameras that have firmware issues and firmware updates. Your lenses can often have firmware updates purely for stuff like compatibility with different cameras, as well as tweaking autofocus, any of those kinds of things as well. So today we're updating the Fuji X-T3. So we'll pop down to X series there. And right there we can see the X-T3, and we can see the newest version was actually released on the 26th of March, and it is version 3.21. So if you scroll down there, we'll find all the notes that you need to understand, and it actually has a good history, if you go back up a little bit, of what's been added in all of the firmwares. So the new one is just for little minor bugs, and it does include all of the further updates as well. So say you are updating from version 1 or version 2, version 3, you will get actually all of the firmwares in the newest firmware as well. So what we'll do is we'll go down to the bottom there, and we'll agree to the licensing and download the file. So that while that downloads quickly, yeah, Max, I might get to you towards the end with your GFX issue as far as your tethering. Into Lightroom, it should work pretty easily, but I'll have a look into it for you as well. So now we've got that file downloaded. All we need to do for this one is I'm going to plug the card that we're using in the camera in, that we've just formatted. And that'll just take a second, guys. Yeah, once we've formatted the card, it's good to go. Should be that one there. Perfect. So if we just open up our downloads folder as well, that's where we will have the FWUP0091.dat file. That's the firmware file, and we basically just need to move that over to the root folder of your card. So your root folder is the main folder, not any of the folders that might come up, such as Fuji or something that'll contain your files. And that just copies over very quickly because it's such a small file. It really doesn't take too long. So we'll just get that card out now and put it back into the camera. Thank you. All right, perfect. So I've got it into the camera now, and I'll quickly go back on camera. All right, perfect. There we go. All right, so we're back on. So first thing that we're going to have a look at is with the Fujifilm system, it's really easy to access the firmware menu. So all you need to do is hit the display button while the camera is off, and you turn it on while holding the display button. So if you have any issues with this, just let us know, but your camera needs to be off to start with, and you just hold the display/back button and turn the camera on while we're going. So we'll do that now. And while I do that, we're going to screen share over to the X-T3 instruction section. Can you just hop on the yes, perfect. Perfect. And if we just click through the detail of firmware update section, There we go. So we'll scroll down this and here we go. So this section here, this will basically tell us what to do once we've got the card with the firmware. And what we're going to do is, as I mentioned, hold the display back setting while turning on the camera. And that'll result in us getting that screen saying firmware upgrade there. So I apologize that you won't be able to see it on our screen. It just doesn't come through on the screen we use. But I've got that screen here. You basically just click through with the OK button there. The next step that you'll get if you scroll down a little bit there, okay? I'll actually be a little bit further down, is select the item. So depending on whether you have a body or a lens on, depends on what you're going to upgrade as well. So I'm going to pick body because that's what we're upgrading here. And my one here is only version 3.01. So the newest one, as we mentioned, is 3.21. So we're going to upgrade that now by just pressing OK. And basically, it just gives you a warning as well to not pull out the battery, not turn off the camera, because again, that can corrupt your file that you're working with as well. So that should take about a minute or two to update. And while that does that, I thought we might look into a few things that we just wanted to talk quickly about. So if you like stuff like these webinars and any of the community programs that we get into, this is our Basecamp program, and this is our new membership program where we can help give back to you guys and let you know when new things are coming in, let you know when we have news on anything exciting in the community. So we have a few different benefits depending on whether you go a free option or our gold membership. Everyone will get a birthday voucher as well. If you're a gold member, you get free delivery, and we actually plant a tree on your behalf for gold members as well. So that's just our way of giving back to the environment where we can. And the other thing we thought we'd maybe mention as well, if we click onto that next tab there, sometimes it's a bit hard to keep up to date with the firmware and knowing when a new firmware comes out, what's actually going to be in it. So a site that we like to use is Petapixel. Us working in the store and talking with people every day, we really want what's coming out in the community. So I've just typed firmware there into the top right, and you can see every brand adds new firmware quite often. You've got things that fix autofocus. You can see stuff like the Sony eye tracking for dogs. Fuji did a big one for eye tracking a couple of months ago. And even stuff like issues for your lens. I know the RF70-200 was having some front focusing issues, and they were actually able to fix that through the lens. So I'll have a quick check to see how our firmware is going there. And we're getting close to done, but another thing that we'll mention as well is that we've recently uploaded more onto our YouTube account. So we're just going to show that quickly. If we have any suggestions for things you'd like to see content-wise as well, and the same with these webinars, we'd love to hear it. We're really trying to work with you guys in our community to see what you actually want to see and how we can help you out with that. So I'm going to have a check on our firmware now, and it looks like we're done. Okay, Richard, have you formatted the card to start with? I'll come back on camera now because we've got our firmware updated. Yes, you formatted. Have you got it in? Yeah, have you got it in the root folder? So it should be the main folder that your card is into. And another possible thing, what SD card are you running off of? Is it a fairly recent card? Good suggestion there by Jackson. Sometimes the camera can have a bit of issues trying to find where it actually is in the folder. It should generally read off of the root folder. But it could be somewhere else as well. Have a look at that and let us know if you're able to find it, if you're having any troubles. Thank you, Richard. And yeah, just make sure it's on the right card. You might have another drive plugged in, or it might be transferring to one of your computer drives. But if you do have any issues going forth and you can't figure it out during this time, I'm happy to help you through it towards the end. We have also recently launched on our website our Groovio service. So that's something where you can have a video chat with one of our guys in the store. And that way we can see what's going on with your actual camera and what's happening, and we can walk through it with you there. So I run the Gruvio service as well, so I'd be happy to walk it through with you, Richard. Yeah, if you do think of any questions later as well, always feel free to contact us after this as well. We're happy to talk about it, whether it's now, later, 6 months later as well, if you have issues later with another firmware. But I definitely say keeping your firmware up to date and just checking in every now and then is quite important. So I've got a question here from Max. Do a lot of street with the X100F. Love the look of the camera. Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think the X100F has an amazing look. I've used it a fair bit myself, and I'm looking to get the X100V soon as I can justify it. Yeah, they're both such an awesome system. I mean, the colors that come out are great. I personally use the Acros with the red filter a lot, and I find that suits my workflow a lot. So I've got a question from Bob there. Is this presentation being recorded? And yeah, absolutely. You can watch it later on. So after this, the recording will be sent to you via a link through the website, and we'll be able to sort that out for you. I've got another question from Louise there. Will any sort of memory card work for your firmware? Yeah, basically any modern memory card will be all right. The good thing about your firmware files is that they're so small, so you don't need a huge behemoth card. The big thing is just to make sure that everything's formatted and to make sure that it's all going to be good to go. Yeah, preferably a newer card and nothing that's broken, just so it doesn't corrupt your camera in any way. Yeah, but what else are you guys shooting on the Fuji? I'd love to hear what you guys are doing with your work and what you think Fuji should bring out next as well. The X-T4 should be quite exciting as well when we can get it in. Yeah, it's going to be a bit of a game changer, I think, compared to the rest of the APS-C cameras on the market. I mean, you've got your IBIS, you've got really good video settings. I do a lot of video myself, so I'm quite looking forward to seeing some of the high frame rate settings on that. What can I do if I'm not comfortable updating myself, Louise asks. If you're not comfortable doing it yourself, like I mentioned, you are welcome to give us a video chat on our Gruvio service. So we've got that up on our CameraPro website. You're more than welcome to give us a call, and we're happy to walk through it with you. You are welcome to come into the store if you are local to Brisbane as well. So feel free to come in, feel free to bring it all in, and we'll walk through it with you and make sure that you can do it in the future as well. Another thing talking on that is we have also offered a consultation program before as well. And we're looking to launch that a bit more when the whole virus dies down a bit more and we're allowed to kind of have a bit more contact with people. And basically you can book a whole hour session for us to go through anything you like, anything relating to your camera, any photography techniques you'd like to learn. You're more than welcome to always contact us for one of those, and we'll always try and make it as good as possible. Another thing I might mention as well is that we are doing some more webinars coming as well. So for the rest of the week, we'll be running firmware webinars like this. So if you do run any other brands like Olympus, Panasonic, Sony, Nikon, we'll be running webinars for those on how to do your firmware specifically for those cameras. The other things that we have coming up are more webinars tailored towards actual photography styles, and we're kind of trying to make it so everyone that's stuck inside has something to do and something to learn while they're inside. So one of our bigger ones that we're going to be doing is a macro webinar. So we'd love to hear what you'd like to learn as far as macro talk for that. I'll be running that one, and we're also doing a Lightroom webinar, which our co-worker Lachlan will be doing, as well as a portrait webinar. So if there's anything that you'd like to learn in these times where we're not allowed to go out and actually shoot and try and develop your skills, let us know, and we'd love to try and do a webinar about it and hopefully give back to you guys somehow. It looks like we have someone typing a question in there. I did mention the battery, so that with your battery, you just need to have it fully charged. So just to clarify, Shannon asked there, sorry, did you mention anything about the battery when updating? So just as a precaution, the camera really can't turn off while it's doing it. It can corrupt basically everything in the camera. So just make sure to have the battery fully charged if you can. some camera brands actually require a fully charged battery. I know Nikon does, but some brands aren't as strict with it, but it's definitely a suggestion to try and minimize any risk that you take while updating. No worries. Glad to help. Jackson there has a question as well. Do I have to put each specific lens on updating the firmware? I believe you do. So basically the reason on that is that I think it actually, depending on the firmware and how intense it is, and some of it can be stuff like focus adjustments and calibration, I think it needs the lens there so you can actually basically calibrate it. The other thing with that is that if you are going to update the camera without a lens on, it'll only come up with the option for a body. Whereas if you have the lens on, then you'll actually find the menu setting to go into that specific lens and update it. So yeah, that's a great question and something to think about as well. And yeah, each specific lens also has a specific firmware. So yeah, unfortunately, if you do have a fairly big setup, it can take a little bit of time, but it's definitely worthwhile if you're getting stuff like better autofocus performance and better efficiency and just more reliable shots, especially if you're working professionally with this Fuji gear. Does that answer your question there all right, Jackson? Just to clarify with Shannon, yeah, every single lens has a firmware that is, yeah, basically specific for that lens. Yeah, perfect, Jackson. I'm glad I can help you out there, mate. Was anyone else there running any different firmwares or having any questions with any of this? Looks like we've got Max typing there. Just out of curiosity, have any of you actually updated any of your lenses before? I know it's something that not a lot of people think about when a lot of people know to update their camera, but not their lenses. So love to hear what you guys think about that. How often does Fuji release firmware updates? Do they notify you? So Fuji they don't release a lot of updates, to be honest, compared to some of the other brands. They tend to release them a bit, I'd probably say about every 6 months or around that time. The thing with Fuji, I find they generally only do it for really big changes, or if they have an issue or a new software they can implement to make everything easier. So they don't do it quite as often as other brands, which I guess is convenient. But when they do an update, it tends to be a lot that they're trying to improve on the camera and trying to extend the life cycle of it and make it a bit better for you in the long run. So got Max there. Issue with the GFX tethering download is that you go to the Adobe site and then seems to confuse. Or do you pay for your download? I can't say I've ever done it with the GFX, but I'd say in the manual, is this the manual for the GFX or for the Adobe system? Because if it's in the GFX, I know a lot of the Fuji stuff is packaged with Capture One now, so it might be referring to that, but I can't remember Lightroom ever actually requiring any payment for tethering. I think you just need to have your general Lightroom subscription. So I'll just cover a few here. Shannon, Louise have never done them with the lenses. Yeah, I think you should definitely give it a go. I mean, I've done it with a few of my lenses, specifically my Sigma lenses that I use on my Canon. They need updating fairly regularly to stay calibrated, so I actually do it quite often. Yeah, so Richard, you've done your lenses before, that's good. And yeah, Jackson, as far as Capture One, yeah, Capture One is awesome for Fuji. So Fuji actually packages everything. They package a light version of Capture One, basically because the sensor that they use works a lot better with Capture One. And I can say I've used Lightroom before because I had it for previous cameras. And basically the X-Trans sensor, the way that it arranges color and pixels, just doesn't quite play right with Lightroom. That is the only Adobe software that it doesn't play right with. You can work it on Photoshop and you're fine, but I say Capture One is a lot better of a program. With high contrast areas on Lightroom, you tend to get a lot of weird looking grain and artifacts. So that's a good question, and that's why Fuji actually partnered up with Capture One, because Capture One could handle the Fuji system really well. So if you haven't tried Capture One before, I'd definitely give it a go. I think it's well worth the money, and it's actually really efficient software. So Max says, if that's the case, it is not connecting in Lightroom. I think what I'll do, Max, is I'll look into that one for you as we go forward towards the end. So I'll get you to feel free to either call us on the video chat after this, or I can just call you via phone number if you'd like. I think I'll have to look into this a bit more to see if I can get this right for you and not just give you some kind of misinformation. But I think it's definitely something that should be working. I'm not too sure why it isn't working. I've been able to tether Fujifilm to computers no worries before, so I'll definitely look into this one for you, Max. I'll just check as well, Richard. How did you go with your X-T3? Did you end up getting it updated all right? I think we'll have a few questions flurry in here quickly. What's my favorite Fuji lens? Oh, that's a tough one. I really like the Fuji lens range. It's a weird one. I'm a portrait shooter mainly, but I actually really like the 16mm 1.4. I think the character that lens has is incredible. The minimum focus on it is it's basically 5 centimeters. I mean, you can get really close with it, and because it's a 24mm equivalent, you just get this wild kind of perspective with it. So I really like the 16mm. That would be my favorite, as well as I'd say the 56. When I've got a bit more time, it's a really good lens. It's a bit slow on the autofocus, so I generally manual focus it for reliability. But I'd definitely say the 16 is my favorite, and then probably the 56. I quite like the f2 range. So your 23 f2, the 35 f2, and the 50 f2. I think they're really good value for money, and they're so small and they suit the system really well. And Richard, no worries, Richard. Yeah, if you can give us a video chat after this, we'll help you out with that and see if we can get it all sorted. I'll just answer Max quickly because I can see he's leaving. Yeah, absolutely, Max. I'll give you a chat later, and feel free to let us know if you're able to fix it, and I'll look into it more to see if we can fix it up for you. I'll get back to Shan now. So, will the X100V need any updates? It has been about a month or two since it came out, and the thing with some new cameras is that they can be shipped with some issues that they just hadn't found yet because they haven't had a lot of research development and just general field testing that isn't the pros that they kind of hire. So firmware updates tend to come quite quickly in the life cycle, in all honesty, just to fix little things. So I can't tell you specifically if there is a Fuji X100V update from what you've already got, but I'd say it's definitely worth checking because, yeah, in the early life cycle, you tend to get a lot of firmware updates compared to later on. All right, Louise asked, can Fuji update the firmware for me? Absolutely. I think you can send the camera off to Fujifilm if you're really having troubles with it, and they can update it in a general service. I also would say feel free to pop into us if you are local. We're happy to do it for you and really give you that kind of after-sale support to update it for you and get you on the right track. And just in case you're having issues with figuring out how to do it, we're happy to show you how to do it as well. And oh yeah, absolutely, Max. I'll have a look into the NAR box for you there as well, the XQD card reader. Yeah, I'll be in contact with you after this. How long does the firmware process take? So the X-T3 one only took about 90 seconds. So whatever time I was there, basically explaining the Basecamp and Petapixel and the YouTube, that's all it took. I'd say all in all, including downloading the file, you're less than 5 minutes really. It is quite quick, to be honest. And it's well worth it. Like I've seen, like I mentioned, I was on the X-T1 to start with, and the X-T1 it was a good camera for its time, but it did have a lot of consistency issues. And I'd say by the time of the X-T1 ended and the X-T2 was coming about, the firmware was getting all the focus right, stuff like noise. It was all just getting right. It was a really good system to run towards the end there. So yeah, that's a great question. And yeah, it only takes about 5 minutes, especially when you've gotten used to it as well. The first time can be a bit clunky, but when you've done it a few times, you'll start to remember it little bit by little bit. And you asked me which lens my favorite was before. What's your favorite lens actually there, Jackson? I've got a question here from Shan asking if microphones need updating. It depends on the brand. I'd say it's worth looking into. Like I know that Rode, they do updates for some of their more advanced products like the Wireless Go. They definitely have updates for those, but it just depends on the brand that you're using. Microphones are a little bit more simple in technology, to be honest. So a lot of them have been, and microphones have been around forever. So a lot of them don't have a lot of firmware stuff, but anything with wireless connections can have firmware issues as well. So I've got a question here from Henry. I downloaded the latest version for my X-T100, but the camera didn't recognize the SD card. And okay. Oh, that's some really good advice there, Henry. So yeah, just because there was a few extra digits there that weren't supposed to be, maybe it was a re-downloaded file or something. So that might actually be good for you there, Richard, to check if your file has any extra digits. So say you've re-downloaded it or something like that, just in case your camera's not recognizing it. So that could possibly be a solution for you, Richard. Thanks for the tip there, Henry. Oh yeah, and yeah, the 35 1.4 is a great lens, Jackson. I actually owned that lens for a long time. I ended up replacing it with the f2 just because I needed to size down a bit. But yeah, the 35 1.4 just really has that character to it. It's got a certain look, and I think you can get some awesome lens out of it, awesome work out of it, to be honest. I think we've got a few questions coming in there. Are there any other major questions that any of you have as well that you'd like answered? I'd love to help you out while we're here. No worries, Jackson. Have a great day. I hope you've been able to learn something here. Thank you. Will we be doing a session on updating microphones or other bits and bobs that aren't camera lenses? Cameras or lenses? We can definitely look into this. Yeah, if there is a demand for it, I know there are a lot of things, like you said, microphones, even stuff like, we were thinking of maybe doing a lens firmware updating session if there's the demand for it. So if any of you would be interested in this, we'd be happy to help out with that. But yeah, there's a lot of the kind of accessory bits don't have a lot of firmware issues. So I think for the most part, it's okay. The other thing you can do is call us on our Groovio service as well, and we're happy to walk through with you personally on how to do it. I can see Bob's typing there. Did the upgrade on my X-T1 while you were chatting, all went okay. Oh, that's great, Peter. I'm really glad that worked out for you. And yeah, like I said, I owned the X-T1, and I think the firmware updates on the X-T1 are actually quite significant. So I hope you get a really good experience out of using that now. And yeah, Shannon, definitely call us on Groovio after all of this. You're more than welcome to, and we'll walk you through doing your wireless go. So I think I'll just close off by saying if there's any other big questions, I'd like to hear them. I'll stay on for a couple of minutes just to make sure there's nothing big for you. But otherwise, feel free to give us a call on our Groovio service or on 1300 431 431 if you'd prefer to not use video. You're more than welcome to get in contact with us. And yeah, we do want to help you out and try and help you sort out everything while we're all isolated and we can't go out and shoot anyway. So we might as well all try and better ourselves in some way, hey? All right. Thank you everyone for joining us. And yeah, I'll keep it open for another minute or so, just in case any other questions come through. Appreciate you all coming through, and keep an eye out for any of our future webinars that you may be interested in as well. Thank you very much.